What's up, YouTube? We are back once again on 66% Entertainment. Today we are going to be discussing a musician who's currently probably one of my favorites, who didn't become popular until years after he died, which played a large role in the years that he was alive. That musician is Nick Drake. I first came across Nick Drake in the book 1971, Never a Dull Moment, Rock's Golden Years. It discusses artists such as Bob Dylan, the breakup of the Beatles, along with George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, or Carole King's Tapestry album. All of these were huge moments that took place in music in the year 1971, and there's so much more to the book. But Nick Drake was one of the topics that I found most interesting. I never listened to his music, but began to listen to his albums after reading the few pages I heard about him. The word that best describes his music for me is melancholy, and it makes sense when you look at his life. In 1934, Rodney Drake met Molly Lloyd in Burma, now Myanmar. Rodney Drake moved to Burma in order to work as an engineer for the Bombay Burma Trading Corporation. Molly Lloyd was the daughter of a senior member of the Indian Civil Service. Rodney proposed to Molly in 1936, but her family wouldn't allow her to to marry Rodney for 1 year until she turned 21. Nick Drake was then born on June 19th, 1948. His family returned to England to live in Warwickshire in 1951. Nick Drake was encouraged by his mother to play the piano, and as he did, he began to compose songs. Drake grew up attending school and also participating in sports. He was seen to be confident, but also somewhat mysterious and not as much a loner at the time, but no one knew too much about him. He wasn't overly sharing about his life. Drake also learned to play the clarinet and saxophone, and in the years 1964 to 65 formed a band with several classmates. As Drake grew, he also learned guitar, and as he spent more time on his music, his school presence began to wane. His grades started to falter, and he became uninterested in his sports. He also took up smoking weed, and some speculate that he might have started doing LSD. In 1967, Nick Drake began at Cambridge studying English literature, although his professor saw him as uncommitted and he often failed to make serious connections. In January 1968, Drake met Robert Kirby, a music student who would become influential in his music career by helping to compose many of the string and woodwind arrangements that appear in his first two albums. Nick Drake began performing in local spaces, in which would lead him to making an impression on Ashley Hutchins, a bass player. Ashley Hutchins went on to introducing Drake to Joe Boyd, the owner of the production and management company Witch Season Productions. Witch Season Productions was licensed to Island Records at the time. Joe Boyd was a respected figure in the UK folk scene. Drake and Boyd immediately formed a connection that would continue through his music career. Boyd acted as a somewhat mentor in a way. Boyd then offered Drake management, publishing, and production contract. Nick Drake's debut album was released in 1969, titled 5 Leaves Left. Boyd took inspiration from Leonard Cohen's album, Songs of Leonard Cohen. Pretty good album, by the way. Boyd wanted an intimate style with just Drake and no extra pop reverb. The album was poorly marketed and supported and didn't end up receiving much popularity and radio time. Reviews were also somewhat mixed. Some claimed that Drake was doing well for himself. Others thought he was no good at all. Drake officially ended his studies at Cambridge 9 months before graduation. His father disapproved of this and complained that the degree could offer him a safety net if his music career didn't pan out. Drake went on to state that this was exactly the opposite of what he wanted. He didn't want any safety net to hold him back. At this time, Nick Drake drifted from places, often staying at his sister's or friend's house. Boyd eventually began to pay for a place to Drake in order to offer some stability and also some place that he could frequently call him. Drake performed few concerts, and these were usually pretty brief and awkward. He was often reluctant to perform, and when he did, he would have to take time in between sets. in order to retune, as most of his songs were being played in different tunings. Due to the little publicity received for his first album, Boyd and Drake agreed to make their new album with a little more mix of the pop genre to try to get a wider audience. Brighter Later was released in 1971 and was his official second album. It became a commercial failure, and the reviews were also heavily mixed. Not long after, Boyd sold Witch Season to Island Records and moved away. Nick Drake then felt abandoned by his mentor. This, combined with the poor sales for his album, led to his depression to worsen. This led to a few more awkward performances by Drake, along with him closing himself off even more from the people around him. He became disappointed by how albums had failed and began to withdraw from his family and any friends. At the same time, Island Records was trying to encourage him to promote Brighter Later with more public appearances and interviews, but that was not what he wanted to do. In October 1971, Drake approached John Wood, who engineered Brighter Later, to begin working on his third album. This was unexpected, even to Island Records at the time. The recording sessions took place over the span of only 2 nights. Drake was dissatisfied with the sound of Brighter Later and thought it was too elaborate. He wanted a better album that only included his guitar, along with one piano overdub on the title track. This created a deeply soulful and sad album that lasts only 28 minutes. It is personally my favorite album of his. It's titled Pink Moon. The album was released in 1972 and sold even fewer copies than his first 2 albums, even though it received pretty good reviews for the most part. This could largely be contributed to Drake still not wanting to promote in public and only doing one interview, which ended with him being pretty awkward with talking about how he doesn't like doing live appearances. In the book 1971, Never a Dull Moment, Rock's Golden Year, the author talks about how the personality of a singer-songwriter. He says, "The curious contradiction of the singer-songwriter's trade is that while the music has to hint at a soul which does not easily yield its secrets, it needs to be accompanied by an iron-clad confidence which enables the artist to get up in a crowded room and demand attention." Drake succeeded at the former, but couldn't achieve the latter. He was deep and emotional, but where he needed confidence and ability to promote, he was too shy and depressed. Nick Drake retired from music after Pink Moon, with less than 4,000 records of his sold between all 3 albums. 1971 was the same year that Drake's family persuaded him to visit a psychiatrist. He was prescribed antidepressants, but was worried that it would have side effects with his large consumption of cannabis. He was also embarrassed about taking them and tried to hide the fact that he was from the others around him. After Pink Moon, Drake became even more antisocial and returned to live with his parents. He would often take his mom's car and drive until the gas ran out, and then he would have to call his parents to come pick him up. He was also living a frugal lifestyle and would often show up at a friend's house to stay a few days, without much interaction before leaving unannounced. In 1972, Drake had a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized for 5 weeks. This was believed to be from major depression, but his former therapist suggested it may just be schizophrenia. I don't mean just schizophrenia, I mean it may be schizophrenia. In 1973, Drake began to work on a 4th album. At this time, his family felt relieved that Drake was finding happiness in music again, but Boyd recalls Drake seeming angry and bitter during this time of recording. In the early hours of November 25th, 1974, Nick Drake died in his bedroom at Farley's, his parents' place. It's said that he went to bed after spending the day with a friend. He then got up to go to the kitchen, in which his family presumed he was getting something to eat. Afterwards, he took an overdose of antidepressants. His mother, Molly, went in on to check on him about noon and found him to be dead. It said he took about 35 to 50 pills and was ruled a suicide by the coroner. After Drake's death, there wasn't much publicity about him. He wasn't too popular. No compilation albums or documentaries or etc. came out due to his death. Throughout most of the 70s, Drake's public profile remained relatively low. In 1979, Island Records released the Fruit Tree box set, which included his 3 albums, the 4 tracks that he began recording before his death, and the extensive biography about him. The sales for this didn't get very high, but Island Records still held on to Drake's catalog. In the mid 80s, Drake was being cited as a large influence for major artists such as Kate Bush, the Black Crowes, Robert Smith of The Cure, and more. This led to further exposures in 1985 when the Dream Academy included a dedication to Nick Drake on one of its hit sleeves. Going back to the book 1971, Never a Dull Moment, Rock's Golden Year, the author David Hepworth talks about Drake gaining that popularity after his death during the 90s, in ways such as Lucinda Williams released a version of Drake's now popular song, Which Will. His songs were done by everyone from the rock band The Flaming Lips to the jazz artist Brad Mehldau. He even mentions a few artists that named songs after Nick Drake. Brad Pitt even waived the fee for him to narrate a BBC documentary about Drake's life. Over the following years, Drake has gained more popularity through documentaries, advertisements using his songs, most popular Volkswagen commercial, and movie soundtracks such as The Royal Tenenbaums, great movie by the way, and Serendipity. Drake was an artist too early for his time. He died before even having any real popularity, but his music is now appreciated by so many. It often reminds me of Van Gogh, one of the most popular artists who wasn't considered a genius until well after he died. Hepworth states in his book, Drake's name didn't resound. Fashionable people didn't drop his name. He didn't stand for anything. Nobody had his picture on his wall. He was just another singer-songwriter making music. He continues to go on and then writes, the early weeks of March 1971 should have been the fullest of Nick Drake's life. He was 22, comfortably off, devastatingly attractive to women, a guitarist that others tried to copy but couldn't, and one of the handful of performers who had a style and sound of their own. He also just had his second record released on Island, which was Britain's hippest record company, and his day slipped by unseized. He almost didn't have a day at all. Although I feel like this may put it overly harsh, it is 100% true that Nick Drake wasn't seen as a popular musician until after he died. Drake never got to see the impact that he had on music, and never got the satisfaction of making it as a singer-songwriter. I hope you all enjoyed this video and learned a little bit, or hopefully more than a little bit, about Nick Drake. Personally, one of my favorites, and I hope you check out his albums. I would recommend Pink Moon as his best, but I would say both of his other two are pretty great and definitely deserve more popularity than they got. Currently, he has like 2 million monthly listeners on Spotify, and his popularity has soared, obviously, but I mean, I would just wish he would have had that popularity and been able to see it while he was still alive. Please check out any of our other channels that will be in the captions, and hope you all have a great rest of your day. See you next time.